Today, we're going to be talking about Xena, and if you're not using her, you are definitely missing out, in my opinion. So she is one of the heroes inside the game that has the nicest pair of wings, as well as an absolutely incredible skill kit. So let's go ahead and dive into it today and see how you want to build her, as well as where she's useful. So first of all, she has a talent that when she's employed, she increases the hero's attack by 20% and all damage reduction by 30% for 30 seconds. Attacks are also going to inflict burning, so dealing 20% continuous magic damage on hit targets, and reduces the cost of the hero's first deployment by 6. Now this is huge, especially when combined with her ultimate, but we'll get to that in a moment. Basic attack deals 120% damage to an enemy when it's booked. It's 100 damage base. She has a passive. When attacking targets inflicted with burning, deals an extra true damage equal to 22%. As I have her, that's going to be at 30% equal to the hero's attack one time. So that's pretty insane. The more stacks of burning the target is inflicted with, the higher the damage dealt, up to 44%, which would of course scale up to 50% as well. Absolutely insane. So especially if you have like a Hex or somebody else on the team that can place burns, cycling her with another hero like that is going to be pretty incredible. Infernal Passion permanently increases the hero's damage by 10%, which with each deployment up to 40%. Now with books, this is going to go all the way up to a 15% increase with each deployment, up to 50%, which is just absolutely insane. Right, so already a pretty cool kit. And then finally, her auto ultimate activates when deployed. So keep in mind, when she's deployed, she increases her attack by 20% and damage reduction by 30, right? So this also activates immediately when she's deployed. Increases her attack by 30%, and this does stack. And crit damage by 80%. Each attack deals 150% damage to up to 5 enemies in range. So it is kind of an AoE, but in a straight line, if that makes sense. The fewer targets hit, the higher the damage dealt, up to 300%, right? So it's going to be up to 300% if you only have one target in range. This skill can only be triggered one time per deployment. After the effect duration ends, reduces attack range to 1 tile ahead. So simply put, once her ultimate ends, which this is a range of her ultimate, right? She's going to go ahead and get this range that she has on her basic attack regularly. So an insane kit on this hero, right? She looks absolutely badass as well. This is like hands down one of the coolest looking heroes in the game, in my opinion. Let's take a look at Awakenings. I don't have any on her. A1, during the ultimate, the attacks deal an extra 90 to 180% damage based on the target's hit. A2, attack plus 300. A3, when she receives fatal damage during the ultimate, enters unyielding for 5 seconds and dies immediately when it ends. The hero cannot be healed during unyielding and cannot be revived after it ends. So something to consider there. Penetration plus 8%. And then finally, A5, during the ultimate, each attack inflicts magic resistance reduction on the target's hit. So she's also adding amplification for her damages. She is incredible, right? Simply incredible. We take a look at the reviews for her. Her lowest reviews are in like Guild War, because obviously she doesn't ult multiple times. She only ults when she's deployed, and you can't cycle heroes inside Guild War. Obviously she's not really useful for Gear Raid 3 or anti-air, but in the areas where she can actually be used, her lowest rating is a 4.3, which is pretty incredible. Now let's go ahead and talk about the build. We're going to take a look at Artifact first. So I have her built inside Frigid Flame. So Frigid Flame is probably not the best, to be honest, because it's going to increase her damage by 4% every 4 seconds when no damage is taken. Stacks up to 3 times. The thing is, though, is you don't really have her out on the field long, right? You only have her out long enough for her ultimate to proc, and then you pull her. So instead of Frigid Flame, you're probably Frigid Flame, rather. You're probably better putting like Eye of Sin on her. You'd also put Wailing Skull. If you run her with some sort of like a bleed team, you could easily put Scarlet Hunt. And then, of course, Lunacy Visor would be very strong on her as well. When we come down to the legendary artifacts, there's not really much of note, in my opinion. Like, you could easily use the Slayer's Malice on her, because her HP is almost always going to be above, so you're just getting a flat 20% damage increase, but almost 3 times higher attack that you get from a maxed out mythical artifact makes it worth it, in my opinion. even if the effect isn't the best. Now, for gear, I think personally that she works the best in Infernal Roar, because all of her attacks inside her ultimate basically count as basic attacks. So we do have her built inside Infernal Roar. Total attributes were just over 20,000 on the attack. We have 104 and then 354 on the crit rate and crit damage respectively. No rage regen on her. She doesn't need it, obviously, right? She's not cycling. She does have an initial cost of 17, but keep in mind her talent reduces that by 6, right? So her first cost deployment, or her first deployment cost, is going to be 11, which is insane. Left hand side, we have Wicked Vengeance. Let me go ahead and show you the gear pieces here. This stuff is certainly not min-maxed. This is probably like the 3rd level of attack gear that I have on my account. So, you know, if you have better gear on your account, then, you know, she's obviously going to have a better build. I always say this, but I am 100% free to play inside the game. So even though I have a pretty stacked account, right, with like Ingrid and Praetus and all that, free-to-play player. So I don't have some of the crazy Kraken gear that you're going to see on some of these showcases. So I think this is a pretty realistic showcase for most players, right? Like eventually you'll be able to get this gear, you'll be able to build her similarly. So that being said, where can you use her? Well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a few options here. So we're going to do basically just a test fight inside the Drake's Chasm Nightmare 4, right? So we're going to go ahead and see what she's capable of doing here. Now, she does have a faction membership of the Infernal. If I could actually find her here somewhere, that would be pretty cool. So she is a fighter from the Infernal, I think that is, right? I'm not mistaken my icons. Yeah, it's the Infernal Blast. So we do want a faction lord, essentially, from that faction, if at all possible, which I don't have many options, so probably the best option here is going to be Pyros. That's literally the only option I have. We'll also go ahead and bring in Diao Chan with her, because I essentially just want to show you, like, you know, best case scenario. And then we're also going to bring Hex as well, right? We'll also bring in Aelin and Pharisee just to serve as healers, just to make sure everybody stays alive. So obviously Hex, with his ultimate, he's inflicting burns on the enemy, which is nice. So we're going to kind of use that to get some extra damage out of her as well. So what we'll do first here is we'll go ahead and just place her down right away. We'll place Diao Chan first to get the inspiration here. Then we're going to place her so you can kind of get an idea of her baseline of damage, right? So you can see she pops in, she instantly activates her ult. She's up over 1,000,000 damage already, which is pretty crazy. We're going to get Pharisee placed down just so we can keep her nice and healed up. As you can see, she is also inflicting the burns as well. And then, of course, with the actual damage that she's doing, this is going to be basically like the max level damage that she can do, because she is attacking one enemy, right? So at the end of her ultimate, she gets roughly 7.7 million damage. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to place Diao Chan here, of course. We're going to activate her ult, but we're also going to put in Hex and then Pharisee, and then we're going to wait until Hex has his ultimate available. We're going to pop Hex's ultimate, then we're going to go ahead and place in our Xena. So once we get the burns coming in from Hex is when we'll go ahead and place. There we go, we have the burns coming in. Now we're going to go ahead and place our Xena, and we should see some decent damage coming in here. Of course, we do have the inspiration coming in from the Diao Chan as well. As you can see, she's doing very decent damage, so she's up over 5 million already. Or sorry, I'm looking at Hex. She's up over 4 million, 5.3 now. The damage is going to be very similar in all honesty, so we didn't get a big damage increase from the burns with Hex. Obviously, if you had her, like, you know, A5 somehow, she would be absolutely insane. Now, you do want to go ahead and recall her. She's essentially just somebody that you'll cycle, because she's not going to do a whole lot of damage, you know, just in her base form, essentially. So we get roughly 8.2 there on the ultimate. So decent damage, right? Obviously, if we compared it to like my A5 Sun Wukong or something like that, it's not even going to be close. But let me show you where she really specializes, and that's going to be in places like the single target arena. So this is the current single target arena team that I use, but I was messing around with some options where I would use Xena as a cycle champion inside the single target. So the real downside is I'm trying to push into like Overlord so I can start to farm towards Lady Alexandra, and you really just need damage dealers that are able to stay up consistently as well as do big amounts of damage, which is kind of why I settled on this team for the time being. But if you were to bring in Xena, she's going to do perfectly fine as well, and I'll kind of just show you how that looks. So we're going to go against the defensive drill master here. This is where I always like to show most of my damage tests just so it's nice and consistent. So you can see we already have her placed, right? So we can place her back here. You can see the crazy range that she has. She pops her ultimate, and look how quickly she's going to take out this mob, right? Like, it is borderline as quick as I'm able to do it with my Sun Wukong, which is pretty insane, all things considered. Now, depending on how fast the other team is, you may be able to leave her out long enough to really benefit from her ult, right? But even if you're not able to, what you can do that's kind of cool, so you can see she's still taking down the second wave here. Significantly less damage, obviously, when she's not ulting. But what you can do with her is you can pull her back, and she's going to give you, like, what was that, 9 cost back, right? So then you can place down some other units to do some extra damage instead. When I was running this team before, I had Sun Wukong, who was able to come in after I recalled her, and it worked very, very well. So that would be my recommendation. Let's go ahead and pop the Sargak, right? And then you can see she's already got, like, she's down to 30 seconds on her cooldown. So if you're a lower tier player, like if you're in, like, you know, platinum, gold, bronze, those sorts of ranks, you can definitely get some use out of her inside the arena by cycling like this. If you're able to throw in, like, for example, a I can't remember the name at the moment for some reason. If you're able to throw in, like, a the chick that you get from, like, doing the main quest line, Volca, there we go. So Volca obviously reduces the time that it takes for a revive, right, which will be immensely helpful, cutting it down by 15 seconds every time you want to deploy your Xena. Now, the one thing to remember, and I learned this the hard way with my testing, is if you deploy her here, once her ultimate ends, she won't be able to hit them at all. So you can see, like, once she kills them, it's fine, but on her regular attack range, she's just going to be reaching right here. So if you want her to actually be able to attack on her basic attack when she's not ulting, she has to be placed one tile further down. Just something to consider if you are going to use her. But I think you kind of get the picture there, where she's able to do very decent damage, and she's able to do, you know, a very competent job inside the single target arena. And sadly, I can't show you, like, you know, lower arena level gameplays because I'm at, like, Platinum 2 right now, so I'm a little ways from the Overlord that I'm trying to reach, but I've been messing around with a bunch of different team compositions, so it's hurt my rank quite a bit, unfortunately. And I absolutely hate the way the arena works right now, where it's, you know, so hard to time things out, but it is what it is, I guess. That being said, additionally, to consider, if you had better gear on her, she would be even more insane, right? So like I mentioned, this is kind of like my lower tier gear that is on her, so if you had better gear on her, it would do even more wondrous things, essentially. So as always, I'm going to show you guys the gear that you would want to use. So obviously, Infernal Roar, Soulbound Arcana doesn't make a whole lot of sense because she's not going to be stacking up her ultimates over time, so that one's pretty much out, right? It's one of the few where you're not going to be using Soulbound Arcana. Something like Ageless Wrath would work very good if you have it. The Morale set could be good as well, though she is cycling quite a bit, so she's not going to give that damage bonus a whole lot. Cataclysm would be fantastic. And then when you're coming into, like, tier 1 sets, you're really just looking for any sort of damage, right? So you're not really too worried about what the gear set actually is. On the left-hand side, as always, we're looking for Warlord, Calamity, Whirlwind, and Wicked Vengeance, really, as the sets that we're going to be going for. You could also use Annihilating Might for the additional crit damage. The one thing to consider about her is you'd probably want to go more attack. So I do have a crit damage amulet on her. You might be better served by switching this out for attack. And this kind of goes to what I was saying, where essentially if you had better gear on her, you'd be able to do better things, but I do need all of my attack percentage gear on other heroes, so I wasn't able to switch it over to her. But the reason for that is with her talent, she's going to increase her own attack, so you want that attack stacking up more, but also with her ultimate, she's already increasing her crit damage by 80%. So having obscene levels of attack on her is going to be a little bit better, I think, because you're going to get a huge boost to the crit damage anyway. So, for example, if I took this crit damage off, then you know, I'd still be getting an equivalent boost once she ults, which is like as soon as you place her. So that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, of course, if you use her, where you use her, and how you like her. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.